And for those of you who just joined us, welcome. We will be starting the session shortly. We're waiting for more of the registrants to sign in, but I am thrilled to see that there are so many people already. It looks like we have right now about almost 80 people and still going up. So we'll just wait, a few more seconds before we start the program. Okay, it's steadied out, so I think we can start. I want to welcome everybody to this virtual admissions information session on Yale's Eli Whitney Students Program. It is wonderful to see so many of you interested in learning about this unique undergraduate education that we offer adult students. My name is Patricia Way. I'm Director of Admissions for the Eli Whitney Students Program. I'm also Director of Veterans Outreach for the Yale Undergraduate Admissions Office. If you would like closed captioning, feel free to click on the live transcript button on your Zoom screen. While as an admissions officer, I can share lots of information about the admissions process and about Yale. I know that you're also eager to learn about student life. So joining me today are three live current Eli Whitney students, Awa, Tyler, and Megan. Can you each introduce yourselves briefly by letting people know where you're from, what college you attended prior to Yale, if any, your major, and and maybe what extracurricular activities that you do outside of taking Yale classes. Awa, do you want to start?
Yes, for sure. My name is Awa, and I'm from Senegal, West Africa, and also Georgia. And I was in community college actually there at Georgia State Perimeter College. And I obtained my associate degree in biology. And at Yale, I am majoring in molecular biology and French studies. And so some extracurricular activities that I do, I am an editor for the French magazine here. And I am also part of a group that tailored to the New Haven community by taking blood pressure and the sugar level, calls Happy.
Great, thank you. Tyler, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Tyler Fielstra. I am originally from Michigan. I've been in the New Haven area for about 20 years, so I know the area pretty well. I matriculated to local community college right around the pandemic, and then transferred to Yale, where I'm currently getting a BA in environmental studies. Extracurriculars are interesting. I have 4 kids at home, so there's mostly just hikes and playgrounds and hanging out with kids. So
you've got your hands full, Tyler. I know. I'm impressed that you are father of 4 kids and taking all these Yale classes. So thank you for joining us today. And Megan, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here this evening. My name is Megan Wright. Before Yale, I spent 12 years working as a professional dancer in San Francisco and New York. And I spent about 2 years at the City University of New York's School of Labor and Urban Studies, where I studied industrial and labor relations. And now at Yale, I'm working my way towards a BA in economics and a certificate in Persian and Iranian studies. Extracurriculars, I do a little bit of writing for the Yale Yale Review of International Studies. And this year, I'm also the president of the Eli Whitney Student Society, which is the sort of student group of us, essentially.
Great, thank you. And so Awa, Tyler, and Megan, they represent the wonderful diversity of our Eli Whitney students. So among the 3, we have students majoring in the biological science, economics, and environmental studies. We have a parent, and we have Eli Whitney students without children. They all had their education interrupted, for a variety of different reasons, family, medical, professional. So you'll get a chance to hear from different perspectives this evening. I know that some of you joining this evening are active duty military or are veterans. Though we do not have a student veteran represented at this session, we are planning on having another virtual information session in January, I think probably around January 21st. So stay tuned for information about that in the coming weeks. That said, the vast majority of our student veterans are enrolled in the Eli Whitney Students Program. And so in this session, we will discuss financial aid, admissions, academics, and the Eli Whitney Students Program will have time to answer your questions, but I ask that you hold off on putting your questions in the Q&A box until the end of our presentation. So there are three pathways to an undergraduate Yale education. The vast majority of Yale students entered as first years. They came to Yale directly from high school, or they might have taken 1 or 2 years off in between. Students are usually eligible to apply as transfer students through our transfer pathway if they have more than at least 1 semester's worth of transferable credits from either 2 or 4-year colleges before coming to Yale. The Eli Whitney Students Program is a pretty unique program designed specifically for non-traditional students wishing to pursue a traditional, in-person Yale undergraduate education. If you will have completed high school more than 5 years ago by the time of your intended term of enrollment at Yale and have not yet received the equivalent of a bachelor's degree, then you are eligible to apply to the Eli Whitney Students Program. Of our roughly 70 current Eli Whitney students, I think the average age is roughly 30. Some are in their early to mid 20s, while we have a few who are older than 50. Eli Whitney students come from all walks of life. For example, they include military veterans, artists, community activists, parents, entrepreneurs. This program offers a more flexible pathway, allowing adult learners to take classes full or part-time. Students who entered Yale as transfer students or first-year students, they cannot take classes part-time. Eli Whitney student advisors usually have experience guiding adult students who have different needs from other undergraduates who might be, 19, 20-year-old. Eli Whitney students live off campus, so they do not live in the dormitories with traditional age undergraduates. So usually students live, they share apartments in New Haven, or they rent their own apartments, or they can apply for graduate housing. Eli Whitney students take the exact same classes as all other undergraduates. There are no courses that are just for Eli Whitney students. All classes are in person. We do not offer any undergraduate online programs. The Eli Whitney Students Program has the same academic requirements and the Eli Whitney students take the same or get the same Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science degrees. So the Eli Whitney Students Program is part of Yale College. It's not a separate school or division within Yale University. It's not a continuing education program. It is part of Yale College. So for this information session today, we're only going to talk about the Eli Whitney Students Program, and we will not be discussing the first year or transfer program. So Awa, I want to start with you and kind of ask you what you think makes the Eli Whitney Students Program special and why it has been a good fit for you.
Yes, that's a great question. And I believe the Eli Whitney program offers such a supportive environment, and it really celebrates the unique path that we all have and our unique perspective as well. And as a non-traditional student, like regardless of your background, where you're from and what you used to do in the past, there is always a sense of not belonging when you go into somewhere new. But the Eli Whitney program, it feels like I don't experience that sense of othering because of the close-knit group that we are. And I knew it was a fit for me because I really strive on like community, and it offered that from the get-go. And I wanted to have a safe place where, although I'm interacting with traditional students, I will also always have a place where I can retrieve and talk to students that had like life experiences and can understand where I'm coming from. So those were the two main points why I thought like the Eli Whitney would be a great fit for me. And I want to say also something that you mentioned, Patricia, was like the flexibility. I could either enroll part-time or full-time, and just the fact that the Eli Whitney program understand that we are adults and we have like life happens, and there is a lot of things that maybe will stop us from taking full load classes. It was something that was very attractive for me.
Yes, and it is not a situation where you have to identify when you apply that you're going to be full-time and then you have to be full-time for the whole time that you're here. You could one semester be part-time, one semester take 4 classes, another semester take 2, another semester take 5. It is very flexible that way. And Tyler, why do you think the Eli Whitney Students Program is a good fit for students with families? And did you always take, a full load of classes, or did you take fewer classes than a full load? How did it work for you with 4 kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. Family life is certainly complex, adding in college. At the community college, I was taking 4 classes at a time, and that was extremely exhausting, but the Eli Whitney Students Program allowed some more flexibility. So we have a 2-year-old at home, and 2 semesters ago, I just decided to only take 2 classes. So I was able to drop down to that. And then the previous one was 4 classes. Now I'm mostly averaging 3 at a time. I've found the sweet spot of what I can handle with 4 kids at home and trying to do all the studying.
And Megan, what was your transition like to Yale?
It was a big transition. Going back to college later in life is something that comes with opportunity costs. And I congratulate everybody who's here this evening, even for thinking about taking that step. For me, it was necessary. I was in the performing arts, which is a field that shut down during the pandemic, and I really needed a change. And the level of structure that Yale provided felt like being on vacation after so much uncertainty in the field during the pandemic years. I was, somebody was like, all right, here's what you're going to do for the next 4 years. Here are all your options, here are all your opportunities. And it continues to be amazing to me that the only thing I have to do with my life is like get up and I walk into a classroom and somebody who knows a lot about something is going to tell me everything they know about that thing. That's like bananas. So it was no matter what, you're moving from the known to the unknown in taking this step. But with the Eli Whitney program, you're doing that as part of a cohort. So everybody's doing that kind of progression together. Yeah, it's been life-changing. It's been great.
That's great. The biggest barrier, I think, for non-traditional students seeking to return to their college education is their ability to afford higher education. And I want to assure you that Yale is affordable. Yale offers one of the most generous need-based financial aid policies in the country. So Yale's need-based financial aid meets 100% of every student's calculated financial need with scholarships and grants. We offer a need-blind admissions policy, which ensures that a student's ability to pay is never a factor in the selection process. So we will never say, oh, we're not going to admit Tyler because he needs financial aid. That doesn't happen. An applicant's financial aid status has no impact whatsoever on our admissions decision. So applying for financial aid will not hurt your chances of admission. And all the financial aid awards are calculated to cover the full cost of attendance. So it's not just tuition. So it does include tuition, housing costs, that's the equivalent of an undergraduate dorm room, meals, travel, and personal expenses. Yale also subsidizes childcare costs for students receiving need-based financial aid who have children. And unlike other Yale students, Eli Whitney students' financial aid is actually on 150% clock. And this is kind of very unusual, in college circles. I don't know of other colleges that do this, but we do this so that our adult students can take advantage of the luxury of being able to take less than a full load of classes. So for example, a student who applies to the transfer program who's coming into Yale as a first semester junior will have 4 semesters to complete their degrees, so 4 semesters of financial aid. But for a student who's coming in as an Eli Whitney student and joining Yale as a first semester junior will actually have, instead of 4, they qualify for 6 semesters of financial aid. So that's something I think that's pretty unique and pretty different, and something to keep in mind. Outside of financial aid, students can apply for funding to conduct research, abroad experiences, and even some unpaid summer internships. Nearly every Eli Whitney student is receiving need-based financial aid or using the military education benefits. If you're a veteran, you can choose between using your military education benefits or our generous need-based financial aid. So do not let the price tag be what stops you from applying to Yale. Again, it does not hurt you to apply for financial aid as we offer need-blind admission. There are, for adult students, I mean, there are things that we do not cover. And also, like Megan said, it's sort of an opportunity cost, right? You might be working right now and you're getting, getting a paycheck. Some of you may be getting a big paycheck. And so I think that is something that students kind of psychologically have to get used to, but understand that the financial aid is pretty generous. And if you determine that Yale can be a good college fit for you, do not let the price tag stop you from applying to Yale. If you apply for financial aid and you are admitted to Yale, you can review your financial aid award before making a final enrollment decision. And before we chat about academics, let me introduce you to the city of New Haven, which is a culturally diverse city of about 130,000 people, located between New York City and Boston along the I-95 corridor. It offers amenities and cultural resources that cities offer, lots of restaurants and parks and music and theater, but yet it has a small college town feel. It's not a sprawling metropolis by any means. It's a very walkable city. And most Eli Whitney students live within walking distance of the campus. I do think maybe some of the students who might be parents might live a little bit kind of further away. But I think generally speaking, most live pretty close to campus. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. So Tyler, you are the one that has kind of lived in New Haven more than anybody else. You've lived in New Haven for 24 years. What would you like to share about New Haven with people who are considering moving here for college?
Well, first I'll start. I never expected to be in New Haven for this long. To be honest, I'm much more country oriented, and I wanted to move back to the country after being here a short time. But the city has grown on me, and like you said, it's not sprawling. It does have a close-knit community feel. It's about as much city as I can handle, and I live in East Rock with my family, and we are a 2-minute walk from East Rock Park. We are a 6-minute bike ride from downtown. I can get to all my classes, in minutes. So just the complexities of shuttling the kids around and doing all their events, but fixing that with all of my classes, it's manageable. So yeah, the city itself, like I know all of my neighbors, very welcoming, and you get what you put out. I mean, what you put in is what you get out in this city, and getting to know your neighbors. There's just a lot to offer. There's so much great food, great nightlife. I don't know what else. And if you can travel out, I mean, Connecticut has a lot to offer too, if you can get outside the city too.
Yeah. And you moved from the South. What surprised you most about New Haven?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I feel like coming from the South, like the further north I've been was North Carolina, so not really up north. And I feel like I had to adjust to the weather. But that's the first thing that was like this striking difference between Georgia and here. But I really enjoy like the closeness with New York because if I can travel easily, get on the train and go to New York if I wish to, or go to Boston as well, which is just allowing me to visit more city in the Northeast side. And I also in New Haven, I feel like there is a diversity of like food, and I enjoy having a good meal. And so there is always this battle of which is your favorite pizza. I see Frank Pepe's. You made you made a good choice, Patricia, because that's mine. But regardless of that, I feel like coming from the South as well, I expected a a difference in terms of prices, just living in like off campus and all of that. But like you mentioned, Patricia, the financial aid was allowed me to cover everything without like worrying about the expenses of like living off campus.
And it's interesting what you said about kind of getting used to the cold weather. I mean, it flurried a little bit with a little bit of snow the other day, and all these students, you know, from the South or California or from Hong Kong, all kind of rushed out to look at the snow. It didn't even stick. It was like nothing. But anyways, Megan, what is your living situation like? Do you live in town? Do you live on your own? Do you share an apartment? What was it like looking for an apartment? Because I know that you know, there are some questions about sort of housing.
Yeah, so I live walking distance from campus, nearby the Yale ice rink. And I live with a Yale graduate student and somebody else who works in New Haven. We get along very well. I was very used to living with roommates before I moved in, so this was not a big adjustment for me. And it was important for me to be able to be within a budget by living with other folks. As far as what other people do around New Haven, some folks do live on their own. I mean, particularly if you're coming with a family, you may not want to live with roommates, which is, you know, you're well within your rights. But many of us do live with roommates. Some live with other Eli students and some do not. Yeah, I would say I'm the opposite of Tyler in that I came from a very big city and I arrived in New Haven and I was like, what do you mean I can't get ice cream at 3 o'clock in the morning? But it has been incredibly rewarding and I've become very close to my neighbors. So yeah, and you know, these like big old rambling New England apartments are pretty fun to live in.
And Awa, do you share an apartment? Or do you live on your own?
So my first year I lived on my own and I really liked it. And in terms of like just finding a place, the mentor that I had coming in was able to visit all the places for me and just like draw out a map of New Haven and show me the neighborhood that I would feel would be better in terms of like the activities that I wanted to do, and which was great. And I feel like the Eli Whitney community kind of provide that. And now I live with a regular students who's like a traditional undergrad, as we call them. And it has been very great. And I don't live far from campus, and it's just a right fit for me.
Yeah. And I think in terms of financial aid, because there's some sort of questions about financial aid and housing. So that the financial aid, it covers housing, but it also kind of depends on the type of housing that you want. I think usually if you are sharing with other people, you know, it works very well. There are also some people who want a bigger space. They have a dog, they want a backyard. Then, you know, your financial aid for housing might not be enough to sort of cover that. But I think most of the time, generally speaking, students are sharing an apartment. If you want to kind of live on your own in a one-bedroom apartment, it might be a little bit more than, you know, what you would get from financial aid. But it is definitely doable and it is affordable. And I think it's kind of also nice with Eli Whitney students, your adult students, and that you may not really want to be living in a dorm situation with, you know, 19 or 20-year-olds either. So there was also, well, we will come back to some of these questions in the Q&A session. So thank you so you may put in your questions in the Q&A box, but we might not get to them until the very end. But don't be shy about putting your questions there. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about Yale's undergraduate, about academics. So our undergraduate student body comprises roughly 6,500 students with a student to faculty ratio of only 6:1. 3/4 of our classes have 20 students or fewer in them. A quarter of the classes have fewer than 10 students. I mean, we do have large lecture classes, but that's not the vast majority of the classes that we have. You know, most of the classes are pretty small. And we feel that to be a leader, no matter in what field you end up choosing, not only do you have to develop an area of expertise, which is your major, but you also have to be able to think analytically, critically, creatively across many disciplines. And so a Yale liberal arts and science education that focuses both on breadth and depth in the curriculum provides students with a strong foundation to pursue their academic, professional, and personal goals, we think. Roughly a third of the classes Yale students take are in their majors. A third of the classes are used to fulfill distributional requirements, and a third of the classes are electives. So students can use them to take classes outside their majors, outside of their distributional requirements, or use that third chunk of classes to fulfill the requirements of a second major. There are also many abroad opportunities, many of which can be fully funded. And not only are faculty members renowned in their fields, but they are also dedicated to teaching undergraduates. I mean, they're not just ensconced away working just with graduate students who have nothing to do with undergrad. Though Yale College is at the core of Yale University, I mean, that's our biggest college within Yale is Yale College, our undergraduate program. Our undergraduates can also take advantage of some of the resources of our 14 graduate and professional schools. We have more than 1,200 science laboratories where faculty and students conduct research. So this photo here is actually a photo of our rare books library, the Beinecke Library. And it not only contains the Gutenberg Bible, which is printed in the 1400s, is right on display in the lobby, but also Japanese woodblock prints from the 8th century, as well as papers from Langston Hughes, a leader of the Harlem Renaissance. And this whole entire collection is accessible to our students. There are many opportunities for research, whether it's in a lab, whether it's in one of our libraries, whether it's in our other centers. And some of you, when you registered, had asked, what majors Yale offers. We offer more than 80 majors, and you can find a listing of those easily on our admissions website. Awa, what was the academic transition like for you coming directly from a two-year college? Sort of in general, like how are Yale courses different from community college classes?
Yeah, so that's definitely something I had in mind before coming at Yale. And I have to say now that my classes tend to be a little bit smaller than as I progress in my major. Like, for example, last semester I had a class where there was 3 other students in it, and it can sound intimidating, but it allows you to have such an organic relationship with your professor, and you get to know more about them and they get to know more about you as well, which is always a plus. And you get to know more also your classmate. And I have to say, Yale, such as other institutions, are academically rigorous, but there is a level of depth and a pace that's a little bit different from my community college, I have to say. But there is so much support along the way that you will never see that you are falling behind or anything of that sort. You have like usually 3 type of supports in a class. I will talk more about the STEM department because I'm a biology major, but you will have a student who is a peer tutor, you have a graduate who is also a peer tutor, a tutor, and your professor. And outside of that, you have a whole department just focusing on you progressing in your class, regardless of what type of classes you're taking. So I feel like, although it is challenging at times, there is such a wide net of like support that you will not feel alone going through your classes.
Yeah, and I only kind of learned about this recently, or in the last few years, is that every Yale undergraduate is assigned to their own personal librarian. I think that's pretty cool. So Tyler, what was the most amazing sort of class you've taken at Yale, or have you had any opportunities to do research at Yale?
Yeah, that's an extremely hard one to answer. I have so many favorites. I never expected to enjoy so many classes, but going into it as an adult, I think I'm getting so much more out of it. But I guess I would have to land on. I pass up woody plant taxonomy and dendrology and the practice of silviculture to say that environmental ethics would probably be my top pick. because for me, this was this path that I'm on is a very personal path for me of self-improvement and new awareness of environmental issues as a former climate change denier. So really wrestling with these ethical issues and really digging deep, like what do I actually think about these issues? And yeah, Professor Stephen Latham, so supportive, and all the TAs, but and having all the discussion sections might be a little extra work to prepare for those, but you go to these sessions and you talk about it with all your classmates, and yeah, you get so much out of it. And at the end of the course, Professor Latham offered to give me a letter of recommendation for whenever I need one. So that also speaks to the support that I was talking about. Completely blown away by all the different professors. So for me, it's almost less about the particular class itself in a way, but the professors that I engage with. I have 3 or 4 professors that would be willing to give me a letter of recommendation when I'm ready for it. So they're ready and willing for Eli Whitney students to be a part of their class and to be engaging as an adult learner with that kind of passion. So.
Well, you mentioned this a little bit, Tyler. Would you mind sharing your personal journey to Yale? How did you end up here? What made you decide to apply?
Yeah, like I said, I mentioned the climate change component, but the real drive was, I was a contractor in the New Haven area for about 20 years, and then I suffered a severe spinal cord injury. I was paralyzed from the waist down initially in 2017. Long road of recovery, was able to start walking again 3 to 4 months later after my injury. It was pretty miraculous. And then my wife said, please, this is now your opportunity to go to college. So I matriculated to Gateway. But so it was a combination of being jolted into this new path, but also having that opportunity, and then combined with my newfound passion of environmental issues, the biodiversity crisis and climate change. So it kind of coalesced at the perfect timing. I mean, I wouldn't say perfect timing is ever good timing for a spinal cord injury, but it's really shaped up to be an amazing opportunity. So.
And did you think when you first moved to New Haven that you would return to college, or that you would end up as a Yale student?
No, not at all. I am actually the first person in my entire family to go to college. So college I was expected to take over the family business. College was a waste of time, all of that. But my wife's side of the family, they've all been to college and they all have high degrees. And my wife's mother graduated from MIT. So, a lot of push in that direction. But yeah, no, I never pictured myself as a student, let alone a Yale college student. It's been a remarkable path. So,
and I would say that that's the vast majority of Eli Whitney students did not think before, a few years before they kind of thought about college or Yale, ever thought about that they would be at Yale, or they were even going to go to college, because their education was interrupted for a reason, right? So I would say that, that's the case for many Eli Whitney students, is that they never thought that they would end up at a place like Yale. And so, Megan, do you want to chat a little bit about kind of your choice of major, and how you did you come to Yale thinking you were going to be an econ major, or what was the thinking behind all of that?
Oh my gosh. I only just declared a major, you guys. I came to Yale thinking that I was going to be, there's a major at Yale called Global Affairs, which is the international relations major. And I had done a lot of international touring as a dancer. I was really interested in cultural diplomacy, blah, 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 blah. And part of the requirements for the Global Affairs major was that I take a class called Quantitative Foundations of Microeconomics. And I was like, I can't believe I have to take this class. I hate math. This sucks. Da da da. And I walked into this class and immediately had my mind blown for the rest of the semester. And I came out of that class being like, I think I have to be an econ major. Prior to Yale, I came from a labor organizing background. I had been fired from the company that I danced for trying to unionize. But I had really come to Yale being like, that part of my life is behind me. And then I took this class that kind of like blew open my understanding of the economic system in which I was working and all of the different sort of moving parts of it, and realizing that all those moving parts are the results of individual decisions. And it was like the matrix peeled open. And so now I'm an econ major. Despite not really knowing how fractions work. But there is, I think one of the things that became very clear to me at Yale is that, I loved CUNY. If there are any CUNY people on this chat, shout out to you. I am indebted to them forever. But there are resources at Yale that let me do things that I would not be able to do at a university with fewer resources. I think what I'm trying to say is that despite Yale being incredibly rigorous, I can do things that are harder than what I would be able to do elsewhere because there's more support. So I'm able to say like, okay, you know what? I do want to be an econ major. I am going to have to learn calculus now. Yikes, but there's a huge amount of support for me to do that. So that's been my journey. And also the whole, like, I needed to take a language, and I took Persian, which is the language that's taught almost nowhere. It's not on Duolingo. It's a beautiful language. This photo of the Beinecke, I went into the Beinecke and could look at like 14th century Persian manuscripts. Like, it just, the resources available at Yale completely changed what I thought I was going to do with my time here. And it's been a ride.
And did any of you go abroad or have abroad experiences or do research? While you're nodding your head, so do you want to say just a few words? I want to be cognizant of the time, but please share your experience.
So yes, I did both. I did summer abroad, and it was great opportunity to learn French in a different country in France, actually, and I was able to also shadow a French doctor while I was there, and it was funded by Yale, so I'm very appreciative of that opportunity. And in terms of also research, I'm currently in a lab, and outside of the lab, I was able to do research over the summer, and it is something that really attracted me for coming into Yale, because 90% of like students majoring in biology are in a lab, and which was so opposed to what I had in community college. So that was just such a plus. And yeah, I enjoy my lab, and there is a plethora of lab here at Yale. Depending on your major, you can just choose one that fits more for you.
So there's much more to a Yale or to a college experience, not just Yale, sort of beyond academics, right? So do not look at your college experience simply as a stepping stone to a good job or career, although certainly I think you do want to get a college education so that you can progress professionally. Um, but it is also an enriching experience in and of itself to be in college, both inside and outside of the classroom. So I would encourage students, whether you end up at Yale or elsewhere, to actively engage and embrace the college community, even though you might be an adult student. You really cannot replicate this college experience after you get your bachelor's degree. At Yale, there is an incredibly strong sense of community. Yale students spend more time engaging the Yale community than they spend in the classroom, right? And so Megan, as the president of the Eli Whitney students group, you're probably the best person to answer this question. I mean, how do Eli Whitney students connect with each other? And why might there be a special bond between our non-traditional students?
I think this speaks to what both Awa and I have said before about this, it's a huge transition, and you're doing it together with a cohort of other adults. There are about 80 of us currently. I think I have that number across all 4 years. I do think it is a community that is there for you if you want it, and if you want to be a library monk and just stay with your books, you're also allowed to do that too. But someone is always available to have lunch with you, to answer your questions, to tell you where to go to get pizza, or to fight with somebody else about where to go to get pizza. I am currently upstairs from an Eli Whitney holiday party that is happening. I went to Costco and bought a bunch of snacks. Everybody's down there eating snacks right now. So it's been a really meaningful and very warm and understanding community of peers.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm taking you away from, the Eli Whitney Students Holiday Party. Um, and and I think it's wonderful that our adult students have strong connections with other non-traditional students, but how are Eli Whitney students folded into the rest of the Yale undergraduate community?
I feel like very seamlessly because there is no distinction. You can share that you're part of the Eli Whitney or you cannot. It's really up to you. And like the students are welcome that different perspective that you bring as an Eli and older student. And you can participate in all activities, in clubs, and there is no distinction, there is no limitation because of a Eli. You are an Eli, you can be in those clubs. I am in like the Yale African Student Association, like Amuse-Bouche, which is the French journal, like 2 or 3 pre-med clubs. So a lot of things that you can just explore. I'm doing even Taekwondo. So there is no limit of what type of activities you can join, and clubs as well. And Megan, she mentioned it, but getting a meal is such a great way to like interact with other Elis, but as well like just the regular student body where you just enjoy a good food, because Yale has like 14 plus different dining places, and there is always a good time, and if you can interact as much or as low with the regular students, it's really up to you, like Megan said.
And at Yale, there are 14 residential colleges, and even though Eli Whitney students do not live in the residential colleges, they are affiliated or signed to a residential college. And I am sure that if I asked each of them, Tyler, Awa, and Megan, what the best residential college is, they will all say that their residential college is the best because you develop this bond with your college from the moment that you step foot on campus. But so even though you don't live in a college, you're still part of that community. And I know that Tyler had already shared sort of a little bit about his journey to Yale. Awa, do you want to share a little bit about sort of how, why were you looking at Yale from, when you were in college in Georgia?
Oh, definitely. I feel a little bit of a background, like after I graduated high school, which I did in Senegal, so not in the US. Because of personal reason, I couldn't go instantly in college, but during that time, I was able to be more immersed in the healthcare. And so I worked as a nurse there in Senegal, and then I transitioned to the US where most of my family are. And I was in my community college, and I was so eager to find a place where I can have that like research opportunities, because it's something that I discovered in my community college, but I needed more of a like an option in order to just see if it was something for me and just explore more the path of like that would lead me to medical school. And Yale was something that I didn't expect to just like find myself in, but it's definitely like through the encouragement of my advisor and all of that, I applied, and I found like that was such a great place for me to just explore more of that medical journey.
Great. And how about you, Megan? In terms of your journey, I know you spoke a little bit about it already, sort of coming from a dancing background.
Yeah. So I went to college when I was 18 for about 5 minutes. There may be some other dancers on this call who know that dancing is a career that you have to commit to at a very young age. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able, there was no way for me to have rigorous academics and the kind of pre-professional training that I needed. So I dropped out immediately and started working, and spent my time spent 12 years working professionally. And then when the pandemic hit, realized combination of getting fired and getting injured and getting old, and then being in a global pandemic made me realize I really needed to change. And it felt like Yale was just waiting for me. So I'm here now.
And we're thrilled that you're here. So I also want to welcome those of you who are military-connected students to this session. We welcome applications from military-connected students. The president of Yale has made a commitment to increasing the number of undergraduate student veterans on our campus. 40 undergraduate student veterans ranging from infantrymen, mechanics, cryptologic linguists, and those in special operations are enrolled at Yale. It's a pretty small but tight-knit community. And our veterans also connect with civilian adult students and with our graduate and professional school students. Student veterans can choose to use their GI Bill Yellow Ribbon benefits or use Yale's generous need-based financial aid. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be having a separate information session for student veterans in January, where you will hear from Yale's current student veterans. So for those of you who are veterans or are active duty, please be sure that you have placed yourself on our admissions mailing list so that we can send you an invitation to that January program. So let's now switch gears a little bit and talk about the logistics of applying to Yale. And I want to also sort of make sure that you all realize that you can apply for a fee waiver request. I mean, the application fee is $80, but if you feel that that is a burden and that you cannot pay the application fee, you can always request that the fee be waived. And so in order to apply to the Yale Eli Whitney Students Program, you have to complete the transfer common application, not the first year common application, but the transfer common application. And once you select Yale as one of the colleges you want to apply to, then you select the Eli Whitney Students Program, and that will be your application form for the Eli Whitney Students Program. So in addition to the application form, we also will require transcripts. We require a resume and 2 recommendation letters. We actually have changed our policy. In the past, we had required 3 letters of recommendation. We will only be requiring 2 starting this year. The application deadline is not until March 1st, but the application form is available. There is no rush. Nobody's going to read your application before March 1st. So I encourage you, yes, go and access the application form, but really spend time to prepare a thoughtful application. The financial aid deadline is April 1st, and we will notify students by mid-May what the admissions decision is. And when the admissions committee reviews applications, we're looking for students who will not only thrive academically at Yale, but we also want to bring in students who will be a positive presence on our campus, who will contribute to the Yale community. And so how do we do this? I know that there were some questions about what we look for. So we certainly pay close attention to your previous academic record. While we have adult students who had consistently strong academic records prior to entering Yale, we also have many successful Eli Whitney applicants with weak high school or weak earlier college records. So do not be discouraged if your previous academic record is not reflective of your academic potential. If this is the case, I encourage you to take some recent college classes before submitting a Yale application so that the admissions committee has strong recent academic credentials to review. Where you take your classes is less important than what classes you take. So you should take liberal arts and science courses, especially math, and classes that focus on critical reading and writing. No matter what your future major is, whether it is economics or the sciences or engineering or art history, you're going to need strong math, reading, and writing skills. And taking those classes will prepare you for academic success, whether at Yale or elsewhere. Avoid classes that Yale does not offer, such as communication, business, criminal justice. And it doesn't mean that if you took those classes, you shouldn't apply. But I would say that, focus more on taking liberal arts and science classes. And if possible, take in-person classes. I know that sometimes isn't possible for people, who might be working or who are in the military. But if you have a choice between in-person and online classes, the in-person classes are just a richer experience. And in-person classes that are similar to the courses that Yale offers are usually transferable. Some online classes are transferable, but not all. And more information about our transfer credit policies can be found on our website. And if you submit SAT or ACT scores, the admissions committee will take them into consideration, but they are optional. They are not required. If those scores are not sent to us, we will simply put more emphasis on the other documents in your file. And on the application form, you will be asked to submit personal statements. The admissions committee would like to know what's important to you, what you're thinking about, your background, what you find exciting, what your goals are, etc. So take time to reflect, to prepare thoughtful and reflective essays, and do not simply just recite your academic or professional accomplishments. We do also are interested in your professional experiences. So we do ask for a resume detailing your academic and professional history. Somebody in the Q&A box had asked about, or when they registered, I can't remember which, saying, do they have to detail sort of every job that they had? I mean, we really want a full history of your employment history. So yes, please share that with us. So the Eli Whitney Students Program requires 2 letters of recommendation. As I said, it used to be 3. And it is strongly recommended that the letters come from academic instructors, because ultimately we're trying to figure out how well you're going to do in an academic setting and in what ways you would contribute to a classroom setting. So that is also one of the reasons why it's helpful to be taking in-person classes, because oftentimes online professors may not know you as well. I mean, again, sort of we understand that some of you may not have taken recent college classes, or maybe the last college class you took was, a long time ago, and you may not be able to get academic instructors, and that's okay. But know that if you've taken recent college classes, it is really helpful to have recommendation letters from people who taught you recently in an academic subject. And the Eli Whitney Students Program can be a wonderful fit for many adult students, but it's also important that you consider applying to colleges with a range of selectivity. I mean, it's simply not prudent, no matter how strong of an applicant you are, to only apply to the colleges that are the most selective. I like to think of it as a funnel. When you're looking and trying to figure out how many colleges or which colleges you are applying to, you want to, kind of really start broadly and consider and explore and do research on a variety of different colleges. And then you want to kind of narrow it down to the colleges that are the right fits. And then you might want to apply maybe to 8 or 10 colleges and universities. And you want to be sure that you don't just apply to schools that are colleges that you definitely will get into. It is important to have those. But if those are the only colleges that you're applying to, you're not perhaps aiming high enough. And you don't want to only apply to colleges that are hardest to get into. You do want a few schools that might be a little bit of a reach, but you also want a bunch of schools in the middle where you're sort of kind of on target to be admitted. So it's nice to have kind of a range of schools with different selectivity that you are applying to. And at this point, I've rambled on too long, and I do want to take time to answer your questions. So continue to post questions in the Q&A box, and one of us will answer your questions. I see that we have 5 minutes left, but I am happy to extend this a little bit if my Yale students can stay on for a few more minutes. But I also understand that some of you may need to leave early. So I want to point out this slide. and it gives you a couple of links. So admissions.yale.edu/Eli-Whitney. That is the main Yale admissions page for the Eli Whitney Students Program. If you haven't done so already, put yourself on the mailing list. We can send you information about admissions updates, about future admissions information sessions, and you can contact us at eliwhitney.students@yale.edu. So feel free to take a photo of that slide. So there have been a few questions that I'm going to pose to some of our Yale students that you have posed. So Pri had asked what a typical day as an Eli Whitney student is like. So Awa, do you want to answer that? Like what's a typical day like?
Oh, that I would say a typical day for me would be either grabbing coffee and then heading to my classes if I have classes that day, heading to the lab, depending. I made my schedule in a way that I will have like alternative days where I can be only on campus fully, and other days where I'm like strictly in the lab because my lab is like maybe five minutes away from the main campus. So it's essentially just through classes, and after around lunchtime grabbing a meal at one of the dining hall, and just like hanging out a little bit with my friends. And after that, if I have more classes in the afternoon, attend those classes. If not, I will probably go to one of the libraries. I like the Bass Library personally, and so I will be there, and I'm a language tutor until like 5, and so I will like do my part-time job that I have here on campus, and yes, and go back home and have dinner, either depending on how I feel. I feel like cooking, I'll go back home and cook something for me, but usually it's not the case. I just eat on campus. And yes, that's a typical day for me.
Megan?
I twice a week have 9 a.m. calculus. So I wake up early and I drink my tea and I think about my life choices, and then I take myself to 9 a.m. calculus. Fortunately, there are other Eli Whitney students in that class together, so we all buckle down. And my favorite library on campus is the Marx Social Science Library, which is in the same building as where I have my calculus classes. So on those days, I go and I usually waste a lot of time talking with my favorite librarians and security guards, and then eventually I will sit and I'll just knock out a full day in the library. On days when I'm not at Marx this semester, I'm taking an architecture class, which is on the opposite end of campus. So I have a beautiful long walk through campus in the morning, go to my architecture class, and then fortunately, my second favorite library on campus is the Haas Arts and Architecture Library. So then I will spend another full day there. But it is such a luxury just to have massive tables to spread out on, and peace and quiet and books and windows and other people working. So most of my time is either in the library or in the dining hall. That's my day.
And Maggie had asked sort of how's the overall experience of being an older student on campus? Tyler, do you want to kind of touch on that? Like, what it's like to be an older student and sitting in a class with 19, 20-year-olds?
It took some adjusting at first, but they're just brilliant kids. But to me, they're kids. So it's I have a 19-year-old son, so literally most of them are the age of my son. So right. They're very respectful, and I participate very freely in classes. I think I speak up more than most of my classmates. But honestly, I would say I'm much more. The professors and the TAs are much more my peers. I still address my professors as professors or doctor this or doctor that, but I communicate freely with my professors. I had one of them as an advisor for my summer internship. And then master's students too. I take a lot of cross-listed courses at the School of the Environment. So I'm all over the place, but I have no problem studying alongside and participating with the the younger students. And I feel welcomed and respected as well.
And Megan and Awa, do either of you have anything to add about sort of being an older student?
Yeah, I would say it's one of the most wonderful parts of being here is the younger students are exceptional, and you will meet really wonderful, bright young people who did adolescence in a pandemic and who are trying to figure out what the real world is. And I went to dinner with a young sophomore who brought a list of questions for me about what the real world was like. And it is so touching to be to be like entrusted with these. You're not a teacher, you're not their dean, you're not a family member. You're able to speak to them on a level that they might not have anybody else in their life to talk to you. And I love that. It's one of my favorite things about being here.
Actually, I should come and talk to you, Megan, about what real life is like. I need to know that. So there actually were some questions from people who registered and actually sort of in the Q&A box about sort of commuting. We got some questions about people commuting from New York City, maybe from Boston. And the Eli Whitney Students Program, I'm going to answer this one. So the Eli Whitney Students Program is not designed for, I think, students who want to commute, because it's very much an experience of being on campus. We have had students who have commuted from New York City, from Westchester. Those students usually end up ultimately moving to the greater New Haven area. It doesn't have to be right in New Haven. It could be, sort of in the surrounding suburbs. But to have to take a train or to drive kind of an hour or more to come to campus is difficult, because so much of everything sort of happens. Some things happen at night, and it might not be classes, but students sort of getting together. That I think if you are sort of commuting from further away, it really impacts your Yale experience. I mean, we currently do have one student. She's married, she's in the military. They're commuting from Deep River, Connecticut, which I think is about 45 minutes away. And they plan on moving to New Haven when their lease ends. And so it really is a much richer experience for people who are living sort of close by. Do any of you sort of disagree with that, or? Okay. And then there were also some questions about sort of taking classes online. We do not have online classes, so all the classes we have are in-person classes. It's very much, even though you don't live in undergraduate housing as an Eli Whitney student, it's very much a traditional undergraduate education. There were some students who were asking about, they were international students, and they had some questions about whether they should attend a community college in the United States. No, I mean, you can attend colleges outside of the United States. You don't have to come to Yale via a domestic community college. But we do expect, whether it's domestic student or an international student, that you have some recent academic credentials for us to look at, especially if your high school or earlier academic record was weaker. And there was also a question about transcripts. So we do require your final high school transcript, whether it's in the United States or outside of the United States. We do require that, even though we don't put a lot of emphasis on your high school transcript. It is something that we require. It is something that we will look at, and we will require all transcripts from colleges that you have attended. There was a question in the Q&A box about working part-time while being a Yale student. Do any of you work part-time and can talk about that?
I guess I work part-time, and it's more with campus job. I work with the head of college, Trumbull, and I also am a language tutor. And I even worked for the student tech STC here on campus. And all of these are available to you. You have like a website where you can just look at student employment, and in my first semester, I knew that I wanted to do something just in order to keep like kind of having that freedom to have like more money just in case I needed some. And it was a great way to just like be able to do that. And also I talked to my employers knew that I was a student, and they let me, like, in case I have a final or paper to write, they just know that I wouldn't be available around that time, and they wouldn't take that against me. And more so, there are some jobs that you can actually work while you're doing your job, which is such a bonus. And I think it's definitely feasible. You just have to manage your workload and know what you can take and what you can't in terms of like your job.
And how many hours per week on average do you think that you work?
It's really up to you. So some weeks I can, if I have like such a easy week, I can work 10 hours, but it's not like 10 full hours where I am like 8 hours a day. I can work here 2, 3, however I please. And some other weeks I work 1 hour, and it's really not like seen bad or frowned upon because you're doing that. They understand you're a student before anything, and so they have a large flexibility around your schedule.
Yeah, and there are many student jobs on campus. I think on average, students work maybe 10 hours a week. And that's very, very doable, even when you're taking classes full time. Even though the Eli Whitney Students Program students can take, classes part-time, it is not designed for people who are working 40 hours a week and taking, two classes. Even if you take, I think, even if you're working 30 hours a week, it will be very difficult, even if you're taking classes part-time. I mean, if you're thinking about working part-time, your academics have to come first. You don't have to work to support yourself financially while you are a Yale student, but student jobs are available. I mean, I don't know, Megan or Tyler, whether you have anything to add about that. Okay. All right. And then do any of you have kind of parting words or advice for students who are thinking about applying to Yale or maybe starting their application? I mean, you all sort of went through the application process relatively recently. Do you have any advice you want to share with the audience? Tyler?
Yeah, I would just say take the process very seriously. The short essays. I was taking 4 classes at the community college at the time, but I was spending more time preparing my essays and my resume. I'd never made a resume before in my life. But it really was a rewarding experience to actually take a deep dive into introspection into yourself and why am I pursuing this? Why do I feel this draw and this need to do this? And anecdotally, I mean, a couple of years in now, I did a summer internship at a land trust in my hometown in Michigan, and it all started to make sense to me. I mean, theoretically, going into Yale, it made sense, but practically, when I'm able to take on this constellation of knowledge from all these different courses I've taken and start applying it to these conversations with like-minded people that are in the field of conservation and ecosystem restoration, like this orb of knowledge starts being able to be applied to something that's something I never would have gotten anywhere else. So that's one bit of advice I would give.
Yes, and it's also interesting, right? Because I think most Eli Whitney students, when they apply, they are thinking that they are coming to Yale and they are going to take classes full time because their education has already been interrupted. They want to be here and finish their degree and sort of proceed because they've already taken sort of a long time to go through their educational journey. But once they're here at Yale, they understand that this experience is really not replicable after they graduate from Yale. And many students kind of also understand that if they don't take, if they're not taking 4 or 5 classes, maybe they're taking 2 or 3 classes, that they actually end up having a richer experience, and they really treasure their Yale experience. I mean, of course, we also have students who will take, 4 or 5 classes every term, but it's, I don't know how to say it, it's kind of intangible. I think it's hard to kind of explain sort of that experience if you haven't sort of experienced it already. Kind of like, in some ways, kind of like Tyler was saying, that you kind of didn't really get it until you arrive at it, right? Megan and Awa, any parting words of advice?
I would say, I would say like, definitely apply. I know that imposter syndrome was like hitting hard during the application process, but it is more so about like being genuine and really dedicating yourself into like, portraying yourself as best as you can, but in more so in a very authentic way. And because the admission officer will be able to, see that you are putting in work. So what I will have to say is just like, don't hesitate, like let them like really, my advisor always said to me, let them say no to you, don't say no to yourself. And I feel like that's something that we need to keep all in mind, regardless of your stage in life. You will always have to, battle with that uncertainty, but you have to push forward and just apply.
Yes, and I think it is really important to not self-select yourself out of the process, because you're scared that you are not going to be admitted. I mean, yes, certainly it is a selective program, but you can be sure that the acceptance rate is 0 if you don't apply, right? 0%. So don't self-select yourself out. I would say that, practically every single Eli Whitney student who is at Yale right now, probably 5-10 years ago, never even thought they would be in college or be at a place like Yale. Megan, you want to have the last word?
Oh gosh, undeservedly so. I would say congratulations to everyone who's here for even thinking about this. That's already a huge step. I would say as you're thinking about your application, remember that you are a full-fledged adult with life experiences and value outside of any academic accomplishments you might have. Remember that you would be coming to Yale not just to sort of take, but also to give back to the community in a way that a traditional undergrad can't. And this can be the college application process is difficult, and so don't hitch your self-worth to whatever letter you get in the mail. Just remember who you are outside of all of this. That's what will make you a valuable person when you come to campus, and that's what makes you a valuable person already.
Thank you. Well said. And the reason why we have the Eli Whitney Students Program is that Yale values the perspectives of non-traditional students. And you all have life and professional experiences. It's simply, that a 19-year-old simply doesn't have. And this is why we have this information session, to share information about our Eli Whitney Students Program. This is why we are committed to having a program for non-traditional students. I know that we were not able to answer all of the questions that you put in the Q&A box, but I hope that this session answered many of your questions. If you have remaining questions, don't be shy about contacting us through eliwhitney.students@yale.edu. We'll be happy to answer your questions. I want to thank Megan. I want to thank Awa. I want to thank Tyler for joining us tonight. You can now go to the Eli Whitney Students Holiday Party. And thank you all for joining us. And I hope that the session was helpful to you as you ponder your next step in your educational journey. I know I went a little bit long, but thank you for staying late with me, and take care. And thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.